Good afternoon. Today I would like to share with you some of the storage mounts that the Conservation Department of the museum at MFIT has crafted. We use readily available archival materials such as ethafoam, tubes, twill tape, and blue board, along with the occasional hardware from the exhibition shop, to create customized hanging storage mounts for the collection's many strapless evening gowns, as well as mounts for the more avant-garde, unusual costume objects in our collection. The museum is located on the urban campus of the Fashion Institute of Technology, a mid-sized public college located in the trendy Chelsea neighborhood of New York City. The museum's collection comprises more than 50,000 objects of fashionable costume, accessories, and textiles dating from the 18th century to the present. High-fashion costume objects can be far more complex than those found in the average person's closet, and as museum objects, their care and safe storage is critical. Contemporary costume objects found in the collection are designed and created in an array of sculptural shapes and volume that very often cannot be fully supported on a simple padded hanger. Today, my presentation will discuss some techniques developed for hanging storage. Shown here is an example of our standard mount that can be used to safely hang strapless dresses, those lovely evening frocks that lack a shoulder line and sleeve. This mount allows for customization based on the dimensions of the individual garment. It does take time and skill to fabricate and customize each mount, but we have managed to standardize the assembly process as much as possible. An hourglass shape is cut from double wall blue board. Our template for this shape was developed by measuring several garments along with many expertise. The dimensions of the individual garment are then measured, and the mount is appropriately padded with polyester fiber, secured with a combination of double stick tape and hand stitches. Bust cups can be created from either mylar or thin ethafoam, stuffed with polyester fiber fill and attached to the body. The padded body is then attached to a hanger and covered with a smooth 100% cotton rib knit or surgical stockinette. The finished mount provides proper support for the bodice and skirt, even distribution of weight while maintaining the integrity of the garment's bodice. Let's look at the more unusual clothing in our collection. Comme des Garçons garments are unique and singular in the world of high fashion. Designer Ray Kawakubo's collections often feature enormous garments that engulf the body. Her designs have typically embraced abstraction and more recently a non-functional style. Since 2014, her collections have consisted of garments that bridge the gap between art and fashion, moving into uncharted territory. In her desire to create fashions that defy conventional beauty, Kawakubo has become the quintessential postmodern designer. The museum began collecting Comme des Garçons in the late 1980s as Kawakubo's designs began to receive international acclaim. However, these wondrous creations can present multiple challenges when they enter a museum collection. For example, how can they be safely stored? Here are some of our most recent acquisitions, each of which required a customized storage solution that I'll be discussing. These voluminous garments are from Kawakubo's Fall 2016 collection titled 18th Century Punk. Interestingly enough, the storage mount for the samurai garment proved to be the most straightforward of the two. The top was compatible with one of the styles of padded hangers we routinely make, with only a minor modification. But the bottom was too three-dimensional to be safely stored on a standard clip hanger. To safely support the bottoms while still maintaining a slim profile, An elongated oval was cut from a block of ethafoam to serve as an insert. While the goal was for the insert to support the bottoms via tension, further support was provided by rectangular extrusions that lined up with the openings in the cage-like hip area of the pant. Once complete, the insert was suspended with twill tapes from the padded hanger supporting the top. To minimize wear from the twill tapes that were inserted through the ethafoam, a piece of blue board was adhered to the bottom of the ethafoam. Lastly, the sides of the ethafoam were wrapped in polyester felt, and the entire package was covered with surgical stockinette. Here you can see the finished mount. For additional support, 2 1-inch wide twill tapes were hand sewn to the heavy front hip panels of the top. Once the garment was on the hanger, the opposite ends of these twill tapes were tied around the top of the hanger, thereby transferring the weight of the garment to its mount. We were then able to easily hang the mounted ensemble in one of our storage cabinets. This pink vinyl two-piece garment required more original thinking, although ultimately the solution was both. While the overdress does have a complex interior structure, which enables it to hold its shape while worn, it still relies on the human body to support that interior structure. And given its size and weight, it is less able than other garments to maintain its shape without the support from the body. Ideally, the storage mount would of a body at key points while keeping its size in check and using materials efficiently. Ultimately, a storage mount was designed using an archival tube and ethafoam as its main supports. Because the garment was exceptionally heavy, a 3-inch diameter archival tube was chosen to support its weight. Due to the large size of the ensemble, it was decided that it would have to be stored on its own garment rack. To accommodate the slight shoulder contour near the neckline, pieces of ethafoam were carved to shape and adhered to the tube. The entire tube was then covered in polyester felt and cotton stockinette. The tube was suspended from 3 S-brackets hung from the garment rack. The 1-inch wide twill tape loops were machine stitch closed, and further stitching was taken to turn the loops, making it easier to position them on the S-brackets. While the padded tube functioned like a pair of enormous shoulders to support the weight of the garment, however, the lower portion was still collapsing in on itself from the lack of legs. To compensate for this, a 1-inch thick ethafoam disc was carved to the shape of the opening. This disc was padded with polyester felt and covered with stockinette. It is held in place via tension, thus maintaining the shape of the lower half of the garment. The harness-like dress, with its coordinating shirt dress, now live happily in our storage room on their own garment rack. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and it has sparked some new solutions for storage conundrums in your collections. Much thanks for your attention and interest.
Okay, thank you for that lovely presentation. We're going to bring our presenters and Sam Hamilton back up for Q&A. If any questions have come up for you, go ahead and put those in our Q&A function at the bottom of your screen.
Hi, Alison and Anne. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that presentation. I guess I want to compliment you on that really great use of materials. They're materials that we all have access to quite easily and such great and efficient solutions. I think they're very cost effective, so that was amazing. Could you please tell us a little bit more about how much time it takes to make those different mounts? I'd be really interested to know that.
Well, I can speak to the pink comme de garçon dress. I made that one personally. I would say once the idea was hatched, it really didn't take more than an hour and a half. However, there were long hours of thinking about the conundrum.
Absolutely. And you're on mute.
Sorry about that. The mount for the strapless dress, it does take a good deal of time, probably about a day. But we were sort of facing the same problems as Becky, with the sides of the strapless dresses being hung from tape and collapsing and distorting. So in the long run, it's really worth it, I would say.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got a question here from Viola, and she's saying, what type of fabric did you use to cover the hangers?
To cover the hangers, we use the stockinette. We find that the surgical stockinette, first of all, is available in several widths. We use the wider width to cover the bodice form. And it's, you know, it's nice because it's a rib knit, so it conforms to the shape of whatever you're using. So that's worked nicely for us, right, Alison?
Yes, I'd say so.
Thank you. I've got a question here from Karen, and she's saying, are you able to store your collection on site in Manhattan, or is everything transported on these mounts to off-site?
No, everything. We are, well, it's the good news and the not so good news. The good news is we have the collection on hand, which is really, it's wonderful. We just had our 2 storage rooms redone a few years ago. And, you know, as in Manhattan, space is expensive. So, like I said, the good news is that it is on site. The not so good news is we don't have an endless amount of space. So that presents a problem. We have to be selective in what we collect at this point.
And that perfectly leads into the next question by Jennifer, where she says, do you have a lot of pieces that get their own rack or take up a significant amount of storage real estate? And does the museum take this into account when they're collecting items?
Yes, we have very big pieces that do take up sometimes racks. We try not to do that. We try to have them in the storage cabinets, but we do, right, Alison, have a few pieces that take up an entire bin in our storage cabinetry. It is what it is. You know,
Yes,
Alison?
I was going to say at this moment, we only have 3 that are in their own black racks, but you never know what the future will bring.
Exactly. And we actually received a new comme de garçon the other day. So we're thinking, and it's equally as large as the ones that we showed you. So we have our work cut out for us, so to speak.
Absolutely. There's a question here around the samurai outfit, and it's, did you have to stitch around the rectangles that slotted into the pants to define the shapes? And could you talk more about that process?
Yes, I did have to stitch around those rectangles. It wasn't too difficult because I had the felt between the epifoam and the stockinette, so I had that to catch too. But I also managed to stitch a little bit through the epifoam, not too much, just to catch it, to get it to stay in place. I used regular cotton thread and a thicker gauge curved needle.
Fantastic. Well, they're all the questions that have come up in the chat. I don't know if you want to just talk to us a little bit more about anything, like, was there, you know, different testing? I guess maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about your choice of materials. You know, I was complimenting you on that because I thought that was just so practical and materials, you know, that we easily have access to. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that decision-making process? You know, why you chose to use those materials and not others, perhaps?
Well, here's the thing. We're actually a very small museum, and but we do mount a lot of exhibitions. We do 5 per year. We have 2 galleries. We don't have permanent display, so it's a constant rotation of different exhibitions. So in addition to the exhibitions, you also have to figure out the storage mounts. We don't at this point have access to a scientific department, so we have to rely on everybody's materials that people have AUDI tested. So it's much easier if we stick to the basics. And we also, we have a lot of interns that come into our lab to do work. So we always try to sort of make sure that all of the things that we are doing are standardized so that they can be repeatable. And that's really sort of our goal. We have to, I kind of always like to say we have to get a lot of bang for our buck. We have a small staff. We need to get through a lot of exhibitions and material and storage mounts. So it doesn't really allow us time to experiment. But that's the way it goes. What do you
it's
think,
very
Alison?
practical.
Yeah. We kind of have to be practical because the next exhibition has to go up, you know, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yep. A few more questions have come through. So there's one here from Lindsay saying, how often do you use mounts from exhibition for storage?
It all depends. Sometimes, for instance, we have a lot of Charles James dresses that are highly sculptural, and we have a whole set of mounts that were made for storage, and then we have a different set of mounts that were made for display. We try to, if possible, we try to make a mount for that can be used for both storage and display. But again, it really depends. For our display, we use a lot of mannequins, and those are the pictures that I showed you. So it all depends.
Yep. There's a question here from Karen. She's saying, is the museum at FIT open to the public right now?
No, unfortunately, we're not. We went through the same thing as everybody else. We shut down in March with the COVID. We have not reopened yet because we are part of the college. We kind of were under what they want us to do. Currently in the college, all of the classes, or most, I should say the majority of the classes are virtual. So there's very few students on site anyway. And we haven't got the go-ahead yet to be able to open. We're hoping that we can open sometime in the spring, but we're sort of got our fingers crossed. And we are currently working on our next exhibition, but again, we're waiting for the go-ahead.
Yeah. Yep. We're all in a very similar situation, aren't we? Yeah. There's a question here from John, and he's saying, what packing storage methods do the designers use when the garments come in? Are the garments flat or volume?
You know, as far as when we accept donations, some of them come in very nicely in blue board boxes, and others come in shopping bags. It really sort of all depends. It runs the gamut, I would say. I think, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, I think you did. Absolutely.
You know,
there's just one quick one. Sorry.
Sure. No, I was going to say we've gotten big, huge ball gowns in little tiny FedEx boxes, and we're like, oh my God. I'm sure we've all experienced that.
Yeah, we sure have. Well, that's it for the Q&A. I'll hand back over to Jessie, and thank you both so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.